Welcome back. And next we're joined by our guest, Dr. Mena Mirhom, a neurological and psychiatry physician. And he's here today to show us some effective ways to keep calm under pressure, something I'm sure we can all use a bit of help with. So thank you and welcome, Dr. Mirhom.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and to jump in, stress and anxiety, they seem like they're just on the rise. Maybe it's relative, but it feels like over the last few decades, it's just been throttling. So can you help give some background on what you're seeing?
Absolutely. It feels that way because that's actually true. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a nearly 40% increase in anxiety. And right now, 1 in 3 folks can actually struggle with an anxiety disorder. So the fact that we're seeing that, maybe it's the fact that it's a little bit of a stressful time. Things are, hectic economically and otherwise. So we are seeing a rise both in regular stress, which can be helpful. If you're crossing the street here in New York City, you got to have a little bit of stress, otherwise you might get hit by a car. But it can be a place where it can get to a place of impacting your function, and that's what we got to be careful of.
That's it, and I do feel like when people get stressed, there's a risk of getting stuck in that space, and potentially for long periods of time. So what do you see as the impacts on the body and the brain when there's long-term stress or anxiety?
You absolutely can get stuck, and part of that reason is that our body is used to being into either I'm going to function regularly or I'm under attack, so I need to fight, flight, or freeze. So if I freeze now, you can be in that mode for a moment or two, but long term, your body doesn't want to feel like it's in war, doesn't want to feel like it's under attack. What that'll do is divert resources from the body to fighting infections, things that you should be doing on a regular basis, and now fight that bear or lion, evolutionarily speaking. So what that can do to our immune system is actually decrease it and give us more of a likelihood to get sick. So one of the things I always tell patients is, you want to stay healthy, keep your mind healthy first.
It's interesting. I think you two wrote a song about that. Stuck in a moment and I cannot get out.
Right. That's right. You too. Bono's my guy.
So I want to turn to social media. This didn't really even exist 10, 15 years ago. I want to understand how that affects adults, but also children as well, and maybe some tips that you might have in dealing with social media, because it's very powerful in connecting with people, but it can also feel like maybe it robs some of your vitality,
Absolutely, Carrie. This is the tremendous thing that we've seen over the years now, both for all age groups, as you mentioned, depending on the medium. 1 in 11 folks are actually seeing bad advice that they're getting from TikTok, for example, and that's having a negative impact on them. Other platforms like Instagram have been shown now that if you're an adolescent, you're constantly comparing yourself to someone else, that can be where you get into trouble. So what do we do about that, right? One part is control your diet. I always tell patients that social media is something that you consume. The same way that you can consume food, make sure, are you getting too much of something? Is something outdated? Is something expired, right? Who are you following? What is the consumption of that media? And that has a direct impact. The same way that what you eat impacts how you feel, what you watch impacts how you feel as well.
It's almost an empowering act just to know that you can do something about it as well. Takes you out of that victim mindset, I guess, in some senses. But I know that you help a lot of people with stress and anxiety through your practice, and I do want to get to some of the things that you'll teach them as well. But is there anything that you can offer for home remedies and things that people can do at home?
Most definitely, and I love what you said there, that the key stuff is in terms of empowerment, because oftentimes with anxiety, when we get stuck that way, we feel like we have no agency. I feel like I'm a victim of my thoughts and my environment. So I tell patients we take back control in the way that we can look at our environment, our thoughts, our behaviors, because the body is known to get triggers. Say, what is triggering me to get more anxious? So I want to control the cues that my body feels. I want to control the thought that I have and be able to redirect it. There's air traffic control, and we trust them to say, a plane's going here, a plane's going there. How do I redirect my thoughts and say, I'm having this thought? Well, no, right now, I want to direct it this way. And now what's the environment can be a cue for my body to change the way that I feel. So there's a lot of empowerment that we want to emphasize for patients, that you have agency.
And I love that analogy about a consumption diet. When I think about diet, I think about food, but really you're consuming all kinds of things all day long. But that's for what you control for yourself. And I want to ask, for families or roommates or, when someone else struggles with mental health or anxiety, it affects more than just them. It affects, all the people around them. So what would you recommend to kindly and positively help others who also might be struggling with anxiety?
Absolutely. I often phrase it like this, that mental health is a team sport. I work a lot with professional athletes and collegiate athletes, and no athlete exists in a vacuum by themselves, even if you're in a solo sport like golf. So if I'm part of a team, that is the family, the friend, the spiritual support, I want to know what is my role and what is an area where I might to bring in an additional member of the team. For example, if I'm a friend, only a friend can comfort in an empathetic, personal, humble way of saying, you know what, I go through this too. This impacts me the same way. So I begin by humbling myself and saying we all go through this together. And then as I build that relationship, I say, is there a need for someone else on the team? Do we need to bring a professional on the team? Do we need to bring a social or spiritual or another kind of support to make sure we have a well-rounded team?
Yeah, most people don't think about themselves as being a part of a team for just going through life, but you're suggesting to say that everybody needs a team around them. It's not just them one-on-one. I
100%.
really love that. Yeah.
Like that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village for us to be fully healthy and fully ourselves.
And you said it earlier, but it does ring true. You know, sometimes stress can be good for us.
Yes.
It helps drive us. It helps us achieve things under pressure. You know, sometimes you just perform better. But it can be overwhelming, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. I personally also want to hear some of your tips for how to really bring that, dial it back, dial it down whenever you need to.
I love the term you use there too, of how we dial it, right? We want to be able to think about this like the volume on your car. You want to turn it up a little bit, right? Any high-performing career, even like being here and functioning in New York, you got to be able to jump up the stress part to say, well, now I'm on. You don't want to be on all the time. One of the most powerful ways that we do that is our breath. Just our breathing itself can be a signal to our body of saying, you know what, when I'm really anxious, I breathe really fast, I hyperventilate because I got to move. My brain needs more and more oxygen. So one way I take control is I take a step back and I say, how am I breathing right now? There's a little exercise that we can even go through together if you want. Yeah. But breathing in general is one of the most important techniques that can signal to my brain, we're not under attack, everything's okay, and now we're going to take back control of our heart rate to modulate, to dial it down, to say now we have to focus, now we have to pay attention, we're not under attack.
Oh, show us the exercise.
Yeah,
What
show us.
I want to find out. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite ones, which is basically a reset of breath work, which is the 4-4-4-4 technique. The first one, we can do it together, which is to breathe in deeply for 4 seconds. Okay, awesome. And you hold that for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. And you exhale slowly for 4 seconds. I integrate with patients this as well. As you inhale and as you exhale, you can feel the release of your stress, and you can also bring in a mantra for you, something that you believe. I am loved, I am valued. If you're spiritual, something that has to do with your spiritual being. As you do that over and over again, at least 4 times, and you can feel the stress being relieved from your body, what that's signaling to your brain is now we're going to slow down our heart rate. Now we're going to be able to say, I'm focusing on this moment here on this show, and I'm not thinking about 100 other things. I'm bringing my thoughts back into this moment, and I'm physically allowing my body to recenter. So that's one that I love a lot too.
And on that, you mentioned you focus on the one thing. Is it true that multitasking is not possible?
Well, I would say not that it's not possible, but I would say it is not as good for us as we think. We have just gotten so used to multitasking. I invite my patients to unitask every now and then to say, this is my task. I am being fully present. And in being fully present, I can do this one thing really, really well before I move to the next one. And one way to do this is another grounding exercise that I can share with you, which is the 5-4-3-2-1. I have a patient told me yesterday, I feel like it's JFK in my mind, just 100 things at the same time. Well, now let's recenter our senses of 5 things that I can see around me. The camera, this wonderful gentleman, this tie. 4 things that I can smell. 3 things that I can feel. 2 things that I can hear. 1 thing that I can taste. I redirect my senses. When I redirect my senses, again, a signal to my body, we're in control, we're not under attack.
Seems to be all about coming into the present moment. What other techniques have you got for that?
That one is my favorite, being able to recenter into the present. This is a mindfulness technique of being, because oftentimes patients will say to me, I don't have control of my thoughts. My thoughts are controlling me. So one way for me to be able to say, okay, if I'm controlling my breathing, I'm controlling my senses, and I want to be able to say, I am here right now. I'm not going to think about tomorrow, I'm not going to think about yesterday. The present is the biggest gift that I have, and that's why I want to bring myself into this particular moment.
Wow, it's been incredible learning about all this, and they're such actionable tips, right? Something that I think can just flip the switch in those moments that otherwise could just go on and on and on.
Exactly.
So that's what you need. And I see that you are having success in your practice with that. So thank you so much for coming in and spending the time with us today to spread this message even further and help us all, really. Dr. Mena Mirhom, psychiatrist, and great to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love that we're empowering people on the morning here, that we can go forth and our anxiety does not control us. We can take control of our anxiety. Thank you for having me.
And we leave you with that. Hopefully you gain some good lessons there, and you can have a more relaxing day and apply some of those to reducing your own stress. So thank you for joining us, and I'm Carrie Dunst.
And I'm Stephanie Cox. Stay tuned for more after this break.